Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. In today's episode, we are looking at a couple of cards that are sort of all over the place. Obviously, with Phantom Rage just a couple of weeks away, everyone is hyped up for the new cards from that set, especially the Mutants, which are a TCG exclusive archetype that was just recently revealed. They do look really interesting though, but beyond that, there is still Maximum Gold, Blazing Vortex, and Genesis Impactors to be looking forward to within the next couple of months. So we want to be ready and keep an eye on the market at all times. The Yu-Gi-Oh market is as volatile as ever, so if a card is being reprinted or new support is going to be announced, you guys should want to be among the first to know so that you know what other pieces you should be looking to either pick up or offload quickly. Let's get started. First up, let's take a look at Zodiac Thoroughblade. So in the past, we've kept an eye on Chakanine, an Xyz monster from the Zodiac archetype with only one ultra rare printing available. Now not too far behind it is Thoroughblade, this time a main deck monster for the deck, still a very important piece. It allows you to discard a Zodiac card to draw a card when it is summoned, and gives a Zodiac monster with it as material 1600 attack points. Now, as we've mentioned before, with the Tri-Brigades and AA Zeus coming to the TCG in Phantom Rage, there is a lot of hype building up for the Zodiac archetype, as they are notably doing really well over in the OCG. I don't know if this success is necessarily going to translate over here in the TCG, given how different our formats are, but lots of people are certainly speculating that it will also be good and are looking to build the deck, which has driven up the price of Thoroughblade to around $10 a piece. There are just two printings of this card, the original and then Megaton reprint ultra rares, so while it's not as bad as Chakanine, which just has the one printing, the fact that Thoroughblade is a 3 of in any Zodiac deck suggests that the card could shoot up in price fairly quickly if the deck were to pick up more and more people's attention. Personally though, I feel like Thoroughblade is going to be reprinted in Maximum Gold alongside Trident, because I feel like with the timing of unbanning Trident and releasing the new cards in Phantom Rage all at the same time, that would be something that just kind of makes sense for Konami to do in order to push additional product. If it doesn't, then of course it will largely depend on how well Zodiacs are able to perform compared to the other TCG decks like Dragon Link and Infernoble Knight, which really is anybody's guess. Next up, let's talk a little bit about the Buster Blader deck. So recently, the Buster Blader engine is something that has started to pick up some people's attention as a relatively compact mini engine that can be very difficult to break through. I know that the DB Grinder has featured this deck on his channel multiple times, and it's an engine that's really easy to utilize, but very difficult to get around. Despite playing a couple of bricks in the deck, you're able to almost always have access to it because of Trap Trick, and the engine is compact enough that you can play it alongside various other engines, such as the Eldritch Dogmatica or Red Eyes Dragoon packages. Now because of this, we are starting to see a few different Buster Blader cards pick up some attention and slowly disappear off of the market. One of the notable pieces is Buster Blader the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, a fusion monster that is a key piece of the engine, preventing your opponent's dragons from activating their effects, and also getting really big. This card could actually just OTK your opponent if they leave the wrong monster up when they're playing something like Dragon Link and you're able to get this onto your side of the field. Now there are a few different printings of this card. The original secret rares are about $10 a piece, while the Megaton reprint secret rares are only around $6 each. Also worth noting is that even the commons are up at $2 to $3 a piece, so definitely a card that you will want to dig out of your bulk if you have the chance. This card wasn't taken seriously for quite a long time, so it's probably really easy to find some extra copies lying around in people's trade binders. The other expensive piece of the Buster engine that we'll look at here is Buster Dragon, which isn't quite as hard to find as the Fusion. Unfortunately, this card only has had one printing from back in Breakers of Shadow and wasn't even reprinted in the Megatons from that year. However, it is just as important of a piece for the Buster Blader lock, as it turns all of your opponent's monsters into dragons, which is what allows the Fusion to negate all effects on your opponent's board. Now, believe it or not, this card has picked up attention in the past, as it has come up here and there as a potentially useful anti-meta strategy, though it has only really seen sustained attention over the last couple of months or so. Buster Dragon has always been the card that people try and target because it just has the one printing, so we've actually seen this card jump up to $30 or so and then settle back down to around $15 several times before, and yet again this card is sitting at just over $30 a piece on TCG Player at the moment. There's actually very little in terms of quantity available, so it's definitely something that people are looking at. This is just one of those cards where you have to sort of balance out how much you want to get for it, how long you feel okay holding onto it for, and how long it is before you think the card could be reprinted and will tank in price as a result. Obviously, there's going to be a chance that it could be reprinted in maximum gold, though I personally have thought that the card should have been reprinted a couple of years ago, so it really is anyone's guess. I suppose if it's not in maximum gold, then it could be in the March reprint set, or maybe as an OTS super or something like that. Personally, I don't own this card, and even if I did, I would be selling it as soon as possible. With no events and a high chance of being reprinted, given how old the card is, I find it hard to justify holding on to something that is so niche. Obviously, if it doesn't get reprinted and continues to see play, then it will go up in price a bit more. But even then, it's going to be a harder card to move that I think you should try to offload while the hype has temporarily caused that increase in demand. So last week we took a look at Cursed Eldland, which has notably been going up in price with people looking at Eldritch possibly being reprinted in maximum gold based on the leaked list that came out a few months ago. And it does make sense, given that Cursed Eldland is a card that you're going to need to play 3 copies of, regardless of what Eldritch variant you're playing. One other card that has caught people's attention is the Elixir of Black Awakening, another key card for the Eldritch deck. This sort of makes sense. It was one of the short printed cards in Secret Slayers, so there are fewer quantities of it running around on the market, which could lead to an eventually higher price point. However, I do believe that this card is only really run at 1, maybe 2, so perhaps that puts a limit on how high Black Awakening's price can actually get. Right now we're seeing it sit at around that $10 to $11 mark. Really though, the question that needs to be answered is whether or not Black Awakening is going to be reprinted alongside Eldritch in maximum gold, assuming that Eldritch does get reprinted. Obviously, a reprint of Eldritch, but no reprint of Black Awakening, will probably lead to Black Awakening becoming a $20 to $30 card almost immediately. However, a reprint of Black Awakening would make the card only worth $1 or $2, and we would probably see a buyout of something like Scarlet Sanguine pretty soon after. Of course, with no Eldritch reprint, it'll kind of depend on what happens with the ban list, because at the moment, Eldritch has kind of fallen out of favor. Overall, there are definitely quite a few possibilities that we need to keep in mind, and all of them are certainly plausible. I personally would just hold on to my copies of Black Awakening, since I don't think it's going to be reprinted. If it did, it would basically destroy all of the value in Secret Slayers if the Eldritch were reprinted, which Konami shouldn't want to do this early on in the set's life. It's been out for less than a year. Either way, I think the best thing to do is keep your eye on those social media tabs and see if any reprint does get confirmed, so that you guys can act quickly as you need to. Next up, a card that we all definitely need to keep an eye on is Dimension Shifter, something that I know a ton of people are talking about stocking up on as a penny stock investment. Now, compared to Nibiru and Dark Ruler No More, Dimension Shifter is kind of that forgotten card that no one really cares about. It had a couple of brief windows to shine in Thunder Dragons and Grand Maju, but obviously never saw the same widespread play that the other 2019 Megaton promos saw. Obviously, having the restriction of not being allowed to have any cards in your graveyard to activate its effect was a little bit too much, so even if you were okay with banishing cards, Dimension Shifter was only really ever live on that turn 0. Now, however, people are looking at Dimension Shifter once again because of the new mutant archetype coming in Phantom Rage, which is able to interact with a lot of banished cards the same way that they would interact with the graveyard, so not really a hindrance to the deck at all. At the same time, Dimension Shifter could be a turn-ending card against Dragon Lynx and Infernoble Knight, which need to be able to access their graveyards in order to function. Now, based on what I read from the mutant cards, the archetype is really cool and it has a lot of potential, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be tier 1 by any means. It certainly could though, if we saw a bunch of meta decks get phased out by an upcoming ban list, so definitely something worth thinking about, maybe picking up a few copies of the cards when the set releases if you can grab them for cheap. With Dimension Shifters only being $1 a piece at the moment, there is no reason not to have at least access to a playset just in case you want to use them in the future. Theoretically, the card could go up in price to like $10 each and replace Dark Ruler No More, which is now available as a common. But I think that there's just too many quantities running around on the market, and there won't be enough people looking to play the mutant archetype to really cause any sort of shortage on the market. I think that realistically, we're going to see Dimension Shifter become maybe a $2 to $3 card that's kind of annoying to move before settling back down to $1 or so. So be aware of the fact that this card is getting some attention at the moment, and try to move some at your locals or something if you can over the next several weeks. Another card related to the new mutant archetype here, Emergency Teleport, is a card that saw buyouts all across the board right when the mutants were first revealed. Emergency Teleport is a quick play spell that summons a level 3 or lower psychic monster from your deck, and with 2 different mutant monsters being E-Telly targets, E-Telly could be a really important combo starter for the strategy. Now it just so happens that, despite Emergency Teleport being limited, the card is actually relatively difficult to find, and doesn't have that common or super rare printing that makes the card so widely available. Obviously, the ultimate rares are the most expensive versions, now at over $80 a piece, and the secret rares are up at $25 each. However, even the lower rarity ultra rares are still at around $15 to $17 a piece, and the gold rares, which are really ugly in my opinion, are all the way up at $10, despite how the card is still limited to 1 here in the TCG. Obviously, all of the mutant lists that I've seen are running E-Telly, and probably would play 2 or 3 copies if they could. With that, it's definitely possible that we could see it go to 2 or 3 on an upcoming ban list. I believe the card was hit back when Cosmos were a meta-relevant deck, but I don't think anyone is too concerned about them right now. However, it's also possible that Konami could use E-Telly going to 2 or 3 to push out and sell an upcoming product, depending on what sort of reprint sets they have planned. For me, I would be looking to sell the lower rarity versions of E-Telly, but keep the higher rarity versions, particularly the ultimate rare and then maybe the secret rare, depending on how you feel about it. Obviously, if it does get reprinted, something low end like the gold rare is going to fall to be a couple of dollars a piece, but the higher rarity prints are much more likely to retain value in the long run, especially if the card goes to 3. So holding on to those high rarities for now is probably a pretty safe move. Next, let's take a quick look at Constellar Pollux, though when I talk about it here, I could have just as easily chosen the DT version of House as well. We just had a new Constellar card announced to be coming out in Blazing Vortex. It's basically a free body on board if you already control a Constellar monster, so it makes Ixie's plays even easier than they were before. With that, we've seen DT Pollux and House see a bit of a price bump up towards the $10 mark a piece, whereas before, they were only maybe $1 or $2. However, it's probably also worth keeping an eye on other DT Constellar cards, such as Sheraton and Star Chart, if you're able to dig them out of your bulk or something like that. The Constellar deck probably isn't going to be very good, but they are a really easy to play deck that a lot of casual players like to play with back in the day, so maybe there will be some people who want to pick up the cards for sentimental reasons, and you'll actually be able to generate some sales and some value from them. This is definitely not a card that you would want to try to pick up by any means. Even if you can grab them for $4 to $5 a piece, I feel like you won't be able to flip them for profit successfully. With cards like this, we want to try and offload whatever we happen to be sitting on at the time, while the cards are at this inflated, hyped up price. Alright, one last card that I want to take a look at here is Infinite Impermanence. So while the original print secret rares are still up at $85 a piece at the moment, I have noticed a bit of a downtrend in price of the ultra rares, which have cooled off from being over $40 to now being around the $38 mark. Not a huge price drop, right? But I believe that this cooling off is indicative of a bigger thing that we are going to see happen soon. I think that everyone is assuming that we are going to be getting a reprint of Infinite Impermanence in the upcoming Maximum Gold set, which would be the 4th version of this card to be released to the TCG. I think that we are about to approach the point where Infinite Impermanence gets that reprint that makes it more widely available to the entire player base at a much lower price, where it becomes maybe a common in a structure deck or a rare or super in some sort of side set, and becomes available to a lot of players for like $5 a piece. We saw this with Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring before, where it got a few different short printed reprints after its initial print, before it was eventually reprinted in the Salamangreat structure deck and fell all the way down to $5 each. When this happens, we will typically see the lower rarity versions fall in price. With Ash, we saw the Legendary Collection Kaiba version and the Shadows in Valhalla version fall from $40 or so all the way down to the $10 mark, and there is a very strong chance that we could see a similarly sharp decline with the prices of Impermanence. The 2 different ultra rare prints that we currently have are going to be considered lower rarities, maybe even lower than the gold rare depending on how nice it looks, assuming that we get it in the Maximum Gold set. That being said, with no events going on right now, it's time to begin looking to offload your extra copies of Infinite Impermanence, because we should all be anticipating them falling in price over the next little while, as everyone expects that inevitable reprint. Alright guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. Guys, I am really excited for November. Between Phantom Rage and Maximum Gold, the Yu-Gi-Oh market is going to be absolutely crazy. I can just feel it. I actually booked off a couple of days at work for the release of Phantom Rage, since I have vacation days that I need to use anyways, so I am looking forward to hanging out with everyone at my locals and seeing what everyone pulls and what's going on there. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure that you hit that thumbs up button for me. Also make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what else is going on in the market that maybe I didn't cover today, so I can hopefully cover it in a future episode to keep all of you guys as informed as possible. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest content from both Tombox and myself. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.